Senator Rob Portman joined his fellow Senate Republicans in discussing the latest inflation numbers released this morning. The United States Bureau of Labor Statistics report showed that the Consumer Price Index rose at a 9.12% annual rate last month, the highest level of inflation since November 1981. Senator Portman pointed out that the only way to combat this inflation is to deal with the supply side of the economy, including more domestic energy production, which Democrats have been unwilling to consider. At the same time, Democrats propose increasing taxes on small businesses and working families, something that Senator Portman argued will hurt lower and middle-income Americans the most, especially as they deal with soaring inflation and rising costs.
18 months prior to the pandemic. Now we see just the opposite. Wages are growing, but not nearly as fast as inflation. So everybody's feeling like they're losing ground. And what the Democrats' answer is, instead of helping on the supply side, doing things that are counterinflationary, is they're proposing things that are going to make it worse. This chart is an example of that. And by the way, it does hit people well under $400,000 a year. But the bigger point is that it's pro-inflation. Because when you tell a pass-through company, which is 99% of the small businesses in Ohio and around the country, you're going to have to pay more in taxes, where does it come from? Well, a lot of that gets passed along to the consumer. Some of it comes out of workers' wages. But all of that is going to add to inflation. So this is exactly the wrong way to go. I'm a pass-through owner. A lot of my colleagues are. I grew up in a pass-through company. We used to get a dividend for one reason only, that's to pay taxes. The rest got reinvested in the company. And yet it all showed up on the individual income tax form because it passes through to you. So I think a lot of Democrats maybe don't realize that's how these companies work. And when you're saying you're going to put taxes on the person who has that income reflected in their individual income tax rate, they take that often out of the company and or, again, pass this along to the consumers and to the employees. So my hope is that the Democrats will see that this is the wrong way to go. Don't add more stimulus spending. That's one thing they're talking about. Don't tax America's small businesses. That's pro-inflationary. Instead, do what we did before the pandemic that was working for everybody, particularly for lower and middle income workers. They were the ones who benefited the most from that growing economy and rising wages. If we do that, we'll begin to get out from under this unbelievable inflation that we're now facing and begin to get the country back on track.
But their confidence is, well, we're only going to increase it on some Americans. Listen, if you're a business and you're dealing with 9% inflation and then you're also tacked on let's say a 3.8% tax, where does that go? It goes to higher prices, and it literally drives the inflation even higher. So their quote-unquote solution for inflation of raising taxes is actually going to increase prices once again. They're literally working to make a bad situation worse. We've got to get them to stop the federal spending and stop proposing raising all these new taxes on it to try to get a handle on what's happening on inflation.
And work towards common sense, bipartisan solutions.
Senator Cornyn.
There's an old expression that when you find yourself in a hole, quit digging. But that just seems like what the Biden administration continues to do, continues to dig the hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's no subject that hits closer to home than the cost of gasoline and fuel for your vehicle. This is where inflation has perhaps demonstrated its the pain, the silent tax you heard about to most people most directly. And you would think that the Biden administration would understand the basic laws of supply and demand. The one reason why prices are high is because demand is high. But when demand's high, if you want to lower the price, you increase the supply. And unfortunately, because of the ideologically driven energy agenda by this White House, rather than have domestic producers in places like Texas and elsewhere produce more oil and gas here in America, President Biden is doing really the unthinkable. He's going to talk to Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia about Saudi Arabia increasing its energy production. Obviously, this is upside down. We could create more good jobs.
There are things needed on COVID that need to be done. Rob correctly pointed out the fact that there are hundreds of billions of dollars of that 1.9 trillion that have not yet been spent out, and that we are trying to find ways to get that redirected or clawed back so that we can stop this overstimulation. The other point I want to make, just remake, is this chart is not that old $1.9 trillion bill. This is the new proposal to pile on top of what we've just been talking about, and this is taxes only. There will be spending matching this. Now, Senator Manchin has said maybe the spending will only be half of this, but the point is there's another huge hundreds of billions of dollars of spending being proposed in the cram down that Senator Schumer is currently pursuing, which is not just the taxes. Today's discussion in this news conference is focused on taxes, but matching this is another huge mistake in terms of piling more subsidy spending and more debt finance spending into the United States economy.